Piercing the base of these massive wings are three essential, protected openings: the foramen rotundum, the round hole, a dedicated pathway for the nerve of the middle face; the foramen oval, the oval hole, allowing safe passage for the nerve of the jaw; and the foramen spinosum, the spine hole, ensuring the unhindered entry of the middle meningeal artery. The lifeline of the inner lining, positioned anterior to the greater wings, are the lesser wings, the alae minores, delicate, horn-shaped projections, contributing to the floor of the anterior basin and forming a segment of the orbit. Defining the boundary between the wings is the superior orbital fissure, an extensive, complex opening, acting as a key thoroughfare for multiple critical structures, allowing passage for the nerves that control the movement of the eyes. Just anterior to this fissure lies the optic canal, a dedicated aperture, providing safe passage for the optic nerve, ensuring the continuous tranquility of sight. Projecting inferiorly from the wings are the pterygoid processes, heavy, downward-pointing structures, functioning as substantial anchor points for the powerful chewing muscles, utilizing the structural integrity of the alabaster matrix to manipulate the jaw. The sphenoid bone, with its complex structure, its protective cradle, and its intricate passages, demonstrates the core genius of the silent architecture: a single, central pillar, holding the entire bony fortress in profound and necessary tranquility. We navigate now to the most intricate and fragile bone located within the interior of the cranial fortress: the single, unpaired stone, the ethmoid bone, the os ethmoidale, strategically nestled between the eyes and the darkness of the nasal cavity. It is the most deeply situated bone of the skull, a hidden center. Remarkably, it is thin-walled and delicate, an ethereal structure. Its very name signifies a sieve, reflecting the sponge-like nature of its structure, riddled with numerous air-filled chambers. The bone matrix is specifically designed for lightness, where immense protection converges with the necessity for high precision. The superior surface is dominated by paired, horizontal sheets, the cribriform plates, the lamina cribrosa, horizontal alabaster plates, perforated like ancient lace, contributing to the rigid roof of the nasal cavity and defining the floor of the anterior fortress. These plates are pierced by numerous minute holes, tiny, protected pathways. Through them pass the delicate filaments of the olfactory nerve, running silently from the breath directly into the brain, receiving the sense of smell, connecting the outer world to the inner mind. This woven barrier is paramount, separating the air below from the precious fluid above, a porcelain seal, maintaining the purity of the cranial reservoir. Rising superiorly, precisely in the midline, is a distinct, sharp projection, the crista galli, the rooster's comb, serving as a critical anchoring role within the central fortress. A tough, fibrous membrane attaches securely to this crest of bone, the falx cerebri, a fold of the dura mater, securing the brain within the rigid cavity, acting like a stabilizing pillar, ensuring the mind remains centered in its protective liquid reservoir. Extending inferiorly from the central mass is the perpendicular plate, the lamina perpendicularis, a flat, thin segment of bone, acting as a dividing pillar, separating the darkness of the right and left nasal cavities. Lateral to this plate lies the labyrinth, a delicate structure riddled with internal cavities, the ethmoid air cells, silent air caves, positioned within the walls, helping to lighten the heavy skeleton of the anterior skull. Extending medially from this sponge-like labyrinth are two highly characteristic, thin projections: the superior and middle nasal conchae, scroll-like structures, quiet marvels of efficiency, protruding into the void, acting as internal baffles. These woven, curved scrolls intentionally introduce gentle movement to the air, warming, moistening, and filtering the breath before it descends further into the respiratory reservoir, contributing fundamentally to internal tranquility. The lateral surfaces form the walls of the orbits. Thus, the ethmoid bone, though the most delicate stone of the cranium, is centrally positioned, functionally interwoven with sight, smell, breathing, and the foundational stability of the brain's internal matrix. We direct our focus deep into the interior of the skull, descending away from the high dome to the very floor of the fortress. This inferior region, the cranial base, the basis cranii, is the architectural floor upon which the entire weight and mass of the brain gently rests. It is the crucial lower boundary, the foundation for the ultimate protective fortress, shielding the mind from below. This base is a highly complex structure, a landscape of bone, intricately formed by the union of ancient stones: the frontal, the ethmoid, the sphenoid, the temporal, and the occipital bones. All contribute to this continuous, heavy supporting surface, knitting together in the dark to form a solid ground internally. The cranial base is not a flat expanse. It is a landscape of depth, a descending series of sculpted terraces, great basins of alabaster, designed to perfectly match the contours of the brain, like water finding its level. The soft tissue settles into the hard rock. These bony ridges are profoundly prominent, serving to organize the inner cranial space into three distinct regions, three levels of silence, known collectively as the cranial fossae. We begin at the highest step, the most anterior section of this internal architecture, the anterior cranial fossa. This basin is the shallowest of the three terraces, exhibiting a gentle, crescent-like shape, a curved shelf of porcelain. It is predominantly formed by the expansive plates of the frontal bone, the os frontal, which turns inward to define the region. It receives structural contributions from the delicate ethmoid bone and the forward projection of the sphenoid, merging together to create a smooth floor. This shallow basin serves a vital purpose. It acts as the supporting cradle for the frontal lobes of the brain, the primary centers for executive function, the seat of thought, the home of the will. Here, the weight of thinking rests, settling down into the cool bone. The bone here, though relatively thin in some areas, presents an internal smooth surface, ensuring the brain tissue above is protected in absolute stillness. No friction, only support. The sensory integrity of this region is maintained by the trigeminal nerve, providing the subtle threads of feeling to the dura mater, the tough outer membrane, lining the floor of this anterior basin like a heavy carpet laid upon the stone. We move deeper now, immediately posterior to the anterior shelf. The structure drops abruptly, descending into the middle terrace, the middle cranial fossa. This basin is architecturally complex, a deeper valley, frequently described as resembling a pair of outstretched birds' wings, frozen in stone. The floor of this middle basin is defined laterally by the greater wings, the alae majores, of the sphenoid bone and the associated temporal bone, spreading outward to hold the weight. The deepest part of this contribution is the rock-like, heavy petrous part of the temporal bone, which rises like a mountain ridge, separating the middle valley from the deep posterior lands. This middle cranial fossa provides the necessary internal contours to securely cradle the temporal lobes of the brain, the centers of memory and language, resting quietly in their stone bed. This region is traversed by numerous critical passages, gateways in the rock, ensuring that nerves and vessels can safely access the face and lower skull. Visualize these silent tunnels: the foramen rotundum, the round hole; the foramen ovale, the oval hole; and the foramen spinosum, the spine hole. They all perforate the greater wings of the sphenoid, protected channels, allowing passage for essential structures, including divisions of the trigeminal nerve and the middle meningeal artery, the rivers of life flowing through the dense matrix, unhindered, safe, and eternal. We direct our focus now deep into the interior of the skull, descending away from the high dome to the very floor of the fortress. This inferior region, the cranial base, is the architectural floor upon which the entire weight and mass of the brain gently rests. It is the crucial foundation, shielding the mind from below. This base is a highly complex structure, a landscape of white bone, intricately formed by the union of ancient stones, knitting together in the dark to form a solid ground internally. The floor is not a flat expanse. It is a landscape of depth, a descending series of sculpted terraces, great basins of alabaster, designed to perfectly match the contours of the brain, like water finding its level. The soft tissue settles into the hard rock. These bony ridges serve to organize the inner space into three distinct regions, three levels of silence. We begin at the highest step, the anterior fossa, the shallowest of the three terraces, exhibiting a gentle, crescent-like shape, a curved shelf of porcelain. It is predominantly formed by the expansive plates of the forehead, which turn inward to define the region, merging together to create a smooth floor. This shallow basin serves a vital purpose. It acts as the supporting cradle for the frontal lobes of the brain, the primary centers for thought, the home of the will. Here, the weight of thinking rests, settling down into the cool bone. The surface here is smooth, ensuring the brain tissue above is protected in absolute stillness. No friction, only support. We move deeper now, immediately behind the anterior shelf. The structure drops abruptly, descending into the middle terrace, the middle fossa. This basin is deeper, frequently described as resembling a pair of outstretched birds' wings, frozen in stone. The floor of this middle basin is defined by the great wings of the central bone, spreading outward to hold the weight. The deepest part of this valley is the rock-like, heavy ridge of the temporal bone, which rises like a mountain, separating the middle valley from the deep lands behind. This middle basin provides the necessary internal contours to securely cradle the temporal lobes of the brain, the centers of memory and language, resting quietly in their stone bed. This region is traversed by numerous critical passages, gateways in the rock, ensuring that nerves and vessels can safely access the face. Visualize these silent tunnels, protected channels, allowing passage for the rivers of life, flowing through the dense matrix, unhindered, safe, and eternal, like ancient aqueducts buried in the earth, carrying vitality through the stone. We descend now to the final level, the most inferior, and deepest structural terrace of the skull, the posterior fossa. This basin occupies the largest volume, a vast, silent cavern in the dark. It forms the grounding base, the bedrock of the entire fortress, holding the weight of the mind from below. This deep, sweeping cavity is designed to house the massive posterior division of the brain, the cerebellum, the little brain, ensuring this crucial coordinator of movement rests in absolute tranquility, floating in the dark, protected from the chaos of motion it controls. Stillness holding the potential for action. At the very center of this deepest basin lies the monumental opening, the Great Gateway, a perfect circle in the floor. It serves as the final portal between worlds, where the spinal cord passes from the protection of the skull into the shelter of the spine, leaving the fortress to become the pillar. Flanking this gateway are the smooth rockers of bone. They articulate with the neck, supporting the heavy cranial mass, balancing the weight of thought upon the column of the body. The sensation here is deep. Ancient fibers monitor the silence of the lowest level. The structure of the cranial base, with its 3 descending alabaster terraces, is a masterpiece of organization, a staircase of stone leading into the self. It organizes the sensitive organs into protective basins, providing segregated tranquility and safety within the encompassing, heavy cranial fortress. The cranial fortress is often viewed as an unbreachable shell, a sphere of dense, alabaster bone, sealed against the world. Yet, even this ultimate architectural shield must allow for traffic, the ceaseless flow of vital energy, information, and drainage necessary to sustain the brain resting within. The floor of the skull, the cranial base, the basis cranii, is not a solid plate. It is a complex, mineralized landscape perforated by numerous apertures, channels, and fissures. 85 named openings, scattered like stars in the stone floor. These openings are not simply empty holes. They are meticulously sculpted, heavy, secret corridors in the fortress walls, precisely dimensioned to shield the major rivers of blood and the 12 pairs of cranial nerves, the messengers of the mind. The structural integrity of the dense bone matrix around these openings is paramount, maintained to ensure neurological tranquility. We examine first the protected channel designed to bring life-sustaining resources into the cranial cavity. This is the carotid canal, the Canalus caroticus, a winding, robust tunnel carved deep into the petrous part of the temporal bone, the hardest rock in the body. It opens on the skull's inferior aspect, nestled quietly, just anterior to the large drainage exit. Through this crucial route passes the river of life, the internal carotid artery, the arteria carotis interna, the main vessel dedicated to supplying the entire brain with oxygen and warmth. The path of this buried pipeline is unique. It is not straight. It is tortuous, curved, like an ancient riverbed carved into a canyon. This winding path through the rock-like bone is believed to serve a vital purpose, to assist in stabilizing the flow, calming the turbulence of the blood before the artery reaches the delicate reservoir. At the base of the brain, the temporal bone tissue itself, particularly this petrous segment, is renowned for its density, a heavy, white vault. This ensures that the internal carotid artery, a lifeline for the central nervous system, is protected by the hardest bone in the entire body. This heavy alabaster wall shields the arterial flow from external pressures, ensuring continuous supply and supporting the body's metabolic demands. In absolute silence, Immediately adjacent, and typically larger and more irregular in shape, is the jugular foramen, the foramen jugulare, a ragged opening in the floor, located where the petrous part of the temporal bone meets the occipital bone, two great plates coming together, leaving a gap for the waters to recede. This large exit is dedicated primarily to drainage, facilitating the quiet removal of metabolic waste from the cranial reservoir. Through the jugular foramen passes the Great Blue River, the internal jugular vein, the vena jugularis interna, the single largest vein of the head. It collects the used blood from the dural sinuses, deep pools like the sigmoid sinus, which becomes the internal jugular vein, as it exits the skull through this foramen, returning the waters to the heart. But drainage is not its sole function. This single aperture also acts as the protected exit for three essential cranial nerves, ancient messengers leaving the fortress: the glossopharyngeal nerve, the vagus nerve, the wanderer, and the accessory nerve. The sheer volume of traffic utilizing this bony passage, vessels for massive drainage, and three major nerve highways underscores its importance to the overall structural tranquility of the system. Moving forward to the central base, we encounter a cluster of precise openings located in the sweeping landscape of the greater wing of the sphenoid bone, the keystone of the cranium, the central anchor that articulates with nearly every other stone, holding the fortress together. Here, pierced through the dense matrix of the wing, is the foramen ovale, the oval window, a perfectly shaped aperture in the floor. This opening provides a shielded exit route for a powerful branch of the trigeminal nerve, the mandibular division, the deep nerve of the jaw. This ancient fiber controls the muscles of mastication, the heavy motion of chewing, and receives the silent sensory input from the lower face. Connecting the surface to the deep mind, slightly posterior and lateral to the oval window, lies the smaller, precise tunnel known as the foramen spinosum, the spine hole. This opening is meticulously named for a subtle, sharp spine of bone that projects from its margin on the inferior surface, a tiny needle in the dark. This small passage facilitates a crucial entry. It is the gateway for the middle meningeal artery, a vital red river, climbing upward to supply blood to the broad inner surfaces of the parietal walls and the temporal scales. It feeds the bone itself. Thus, the spine hole is a protected conduit, supporting the structural integrity of the very fortress walls themselves, keeping the shell alive. Other specialized, quiet tunnels complete the woven lattice of the cranial floor, each dedicated to a precise function. We look now to the rock-like mountain, the petrous part of the temporal bone. On its posterior face lies the internal acoustic meatus, the inner passage. This tunnel transmits two delicate cables dedicated to the senses, the facial nerve, and the vestibulocochlear nerve, the ancient nerve of hearing, and the nerve of balance. Equilibrium, the petrous bone's rock-like density, ensures these delicate sensory pathways remain unharmed, shielded from vibration, wrapped in silence, until the moment they are needed. Further deep, hidden medial and superior to the smooth rockers, the occipital condyles, provides the shielded route. For the hypoglossal canal, a tunnel buried in the base. This provides the passage for the nerve of the tongue, the instrument of speech and swallowing, requiring dedicated protection within the heavy occipital bone. Finally, we observe the foramen lacerum, The lacerated hole, a jagged opening between the temporal and sphenoid bones. In the dry bone, it appears conspicuous, broken, but in the living person, this opening is almost completely closed, filled with a floor of cartilage, a living seal, maintained in silence. These passages, often described as simple holes, are in reality armored tubes, dense, calcium-rich tunnels, serving as the secret corridors and buried pipelines, essential for maintaining the brain's constant energy reservoir and communication tranquility. Within the ultimate alabaster fortress, we conclude our meticulous inspection of the cranium, the bone structure surrounding the brain. We observe the final, quiet transformation that completes this ultimate protective shell, the journey from softness to stone. In the beginning, in the newborn, the cranial roof, the calvaria, is not yet a completely fused fortress. It is an archipelago of plates, floating in the dark. Certain areas exist where the bony plates have yet to fully knit together. Temporary gaps in the armor, covered only by a tough, fibrous membrane. These are the fontanelles, the soft spots, windows to the pulse within. The presence of these pliable areas is not a flaw. It is a necessity, permitting the necessary, silent deformation of the skull during the journey of birth, and allowing for the immense, crucial expansion of the mind during the critical stages of infancy. The brain grows in the dark, and the bone yields to make space. But this state is temporary. A slow, inevitable alchemy begins. The quiet sealing, the transformation of these fibrous membranes into solid, unyielding bone tissue. This process is known as intramembranous ossification, the creation of the wall within the veil. This is the mechanism by which most of the bones of the skull are formed, those thin, flat alabaster shields. The process involves the formation of bone directly within the fabric, turning the soft membrane into hard rock. Crystals of calcium and phosphate arrive, building bridges across the gaps. This precise skeletal process gently eliminates the fontanelles, closing the windows and fusing the thin plates along the tight, interlocking seams. The sutures, the anterior fontanelle, often the largest and most easily felt, is positioned where the frontal and two parietal bones meet, the crossroads of the crown. Its closure signifies a major step in establishing the permanent, uncompromised structural integrity of the cranial fortress. The gates are locking. As the fibrous tissue mineralizes, the dense bone matrix is meticulously laid down, layer upon layer. This process gives rise to the finalized, characteristic structure of a flat cranial bone, a powerful, shock-resistant sandwich. This final woven structure consists of outer and inner layers. Of compact bone, the substantia compacta, smooth porcelain walls, separated by the internal cushion. Of spongy bone, the diplo. The diplo is the heavy, porous buffer, rich in the ancient calcium salts, that grant the bone its rock-like hardness. This internal layer absorbs the kinetic energy of impacts, taking the shock of the world and dissolving it, ensuring that even under duress, the brain maintains its delicate tranquility. The completed calvaria is thus a testament to protection, where soft spots are replaced by porcelain strength, and vulnerability yields to dense armor. The work is done. The silent architecture is complete. Standing guard in the eternal dark. Now, visualize the complete cranial structure, the finished fortress, rising in the dark. The neurocranium forms a unified, continuous dome and a grounding base, The superior dome protects the cerebrum, arching over the mind like a white sky, while the three descending internal terraces, the anterior, middle, and posterior fossae, perfectly cradle the brain's massive lobes, a bed of stone, sculpted to match the sleeper. The occipital bone, the os occipitale, anchors this structure from behind, transferring the entire mass to the cervical pillar below, the weight of the head, surrendering to the strength of the neck. The protection offered by this structure extends beyond the dense, heavy alabaster walls. There are softer layers within the rock. The neural tissue of the brain is additionally protected by 3 layers of membranes, known as the meninges, the tunic of the brain. The outermost layer, the dura mater, the tough mother, is a resilient, leather-like membrane that lines the interior of the bony enclosure. It adheres to the porcelain walls, like a heavy tapestry hanging in a stone hall, sealing the bone. Beneath this tough outer shield lies the arachnoid mater, delicate, like a spider's web woven in silence. And finally, the pia mater, the tender mother, wrapping the brain itself in a gentle embrace, cushioning the brain further. Within this silent architecture is the ancient water, the liquor cerebrospinalis, cerebrospinal fluid. This clear, crystal liquid fills the subarachnoid space, the quiet area between the web and the tender skin, an internal ocean. The fluid functions to float and cushion the entire central nervous system. The brain essentially floats in this internal liquid reservoir, suspended in weightlessness, reducing its effective weight. The heaviness of thought is lifted, protected from internal compressive shock against the unforgiving bone matrix. This hydraulic cushion ensures profound, continuous tranquility for the central control center, the total assembly, the white bone, the woven meninges, the lubricating fluid, and the soft tissues, is a system built for absolute, quiet protection. The skull is the ultimate expression of the silent architecture, an enclosure engineered for the preservation of consciousness, memory, and thought. Our meticulous review of the skeletal framework concludes. The tour of the fortress is over. We have traveled through the mineralized matrix of dense compact bone. We have examined the delicate, woven lattice of the spongy bone and settled our focus upon the final alabaster fortress. There is nothing left to observe, nothing left to analyze. The gates are closed. Feel the heavy stability of this completed structure. The bony walls are sealed, the sutures are locked tight, and the vital components are housed in absolute protection. The body, supported by its pillar and enclosed by its fortress, is now completely at rest. Allow your mind to sink into the deep security of this structural knowledge. There is safety in this silent architecture. Let the profound tranquility of this protected space envelop you now, drifting deeper into the marrow of the night. You are safely held by stone, by water, and by silence. Rest, sleep,